3 continents, 1 empire. For over 600 years, the Ottomans commanded the globe from the heart of Persia to the coasts of Africa. They didn't just conquer, they connected, creating a powerhouse that blended civilizations and rewrote the rules of power. The birth of an empire. The story of the Ottoman Empire begins not in the grand palaces of Istanbul, but on the rugged frontier lands of Anatolia, a place where empires had risen and fallen for centuries. By the late 1200s, the once mighty Seljuk Sultanate of Rum was collapsing under the weight of Mongol invasions. In its shadow, dozens of small Turkish principalities, known as beyliks, sprang up, each led by ambitious warriors seeking glory, land, and survival. Among them was a small, seemingly insignificant beylik, led by a man named Osman, the son of Ertuğrul, a tribal chief of the Kayı clan. Osman inherited more than just land. He inherited a vision. Living on the borderlands of the crumbling Byzantine Empire, his people were known as ghazis, warriors of faith, driven by both survival and the call of holy war. Osman's raids against Byzantine towns were not only acts of conquest, but symbols of divine destiny. Legend tells us that one night Osman had a dream. In it, a great tree grew from his chest, its branches spreading over 3 continents, Asia, Europe, and Africa. When he awoke, a wise scholar interpreted the dream. Osman's descendants would rule vast lands and countless peoples under a single banner. Osman's leadership brought him allies, victories, and legitimacy. His small state expanded steadily, taking key Byzantine fortresses and uniting neighboring tribes. But it was his son, Orhan, who transformed the beylik into a true power, capturing the Anatolian city of Bursa in 1326, which became the first Ottoman capital. From these humble beginnings, a dynasty was born. As the Byzantine Empire weakened, the Ottomans saw opportunity across the narrow waters of the Dardanelles. In 1354, an earthquake devastated the Byzantine stronghold of Gallipoli, and the Ottomans swiftly moved in. It was their first foothold in Europe. Under Murad I, Orhan's son, the Ottoman state evolved into a true empire. Murad centralized power, created a professional fighting force known as the Janissaries, elite soldiers taken from Christian families through the Devshirme system, and introduced the title Sultan. Murad's armies swept through the Balkans, crushing rival states and bringing much of southeastern Europe under Ottoman rule. In 1389, at the legendary Battle of Kosovo, the Ottomans faced a united Balkan force. The battle was fierce, bloody, and costly, but the Ottomans emerged victorious, securing their dominance in the region. Murad I was killed on the battlefield, but his legacy lived on through his son, Bayezid I, known to history as Yildirim, or the Thunderbolt, for his speed and ferocity in war. In 1402, Bayezid faced the unstoppable conqueror Tamerlane at the Battle of Ankara. The Ottomans were crushed, and Bayezid was taken prisoner. The empire teetered on the brink of collapse, descending into a civil war known as the Ottoman Interregnum. For over a decade, Ottoman princes fought each other for the throne. Many thought the empire was finished. Yet, from the chaos, a new leader emerged, Mehmed I, who reunified the fractured lands and restored stability. Then came his son, Murad II, who rebuilt the army, recaptured lost territories, and revived the dream of expansion. A young sultan was about to rise, one who would bring the medieval world to an end and usher in a new era of empire. The conquest of Constantinople. By the mid-15th century, the Ottomans stood as the dominant power in both Anatolia and the Balkans. Yet, one city still eluded them: Constantinople, the magnificent capital of the Byzantine Empire. In 1451, a 19-year-old sultan named Mehmed II ascended the Ottoman throne. Ambitious, brilliant, and unrelenting, he saw what his ancestors could not finish as his divine mission. Mehmed spent 2 years preparing for the siege. he constructed the mighty fortress of Rumeli Hisara on the European side of the Bosporus, cutting off the Byzantine capital from aid. He gathered an army of nearly 80,000 men, including janissaries, artillery crews, engineers, and sailors. But his greatest weapon was something the world had never seen before: massive cannons capable of hurling stone balls weighing hundreds of kilograms straight through ancient walls. In April 1453, the siege began. For 53 days, Constantinople stood defiant. Its emperor, Constantine XI Palaiologos, rallied his soldiers and citizens alike, knowing their stand was hopeless, yet refusing to surrender. Byzantine cannons roared, Greek fire blazed, and the walls that had resisted for a millennium held firm, until the morning of May 29, 1453. When Mehmed entered the city, he dismounted his horse and bowed in prayer. Then, walking into the Hagia Sophia, the great church that had symbolized Christendom for 1,000 years, he ordered it converted into a mosque. The city was reborn, renamed Istanbul, and declared the capital of the Ottoman Empire. Mehmed II transformed his empire into a center of learning, architecture, and global trade. Under his rule, the Ottomans became the heirs of both the Islamic Caliphate and the Roman imperial tradition. The Golden Age, Suleiman the Magnificent. After the conquest of Constantinople, the Ottoman Empire entered a new era, an era of power, prosperity, and prestige. Under Mehmed II and his successors, the empire expanded across the Balkans, the Middle East, and North Africa. They built an administrative machine that rivaled even ancient Rome in efficiency. At the center of it all stood the Sultan, absolute ruler, political mastermind, and spiritual leader. When Sultan Suleiman I ascended the Ottoman throne in 1520, few could have imagined the sheer scale of power and glory his reign would bring. Known to history as Suleiman the Magnificent in the West, and as Kanuni, the lawgiver, in the East, his rule marked the absolute zenith of the Ottoman Empire. For 46 years, Suleiman led his empire with a mix of military brilliance, legal reform, and cultural patronage, leaving a legacy that still resonates today. In 1521, his armies captured Belgrade, the gateway to Central Europe, securing Ottoman control over the Danube frontier. Just 2 years later, in 1522, he expelled the Knights of St. John from Rhodes, claiming one of the Mediterranean's most strategic islands. But perhaps his most dramatic triumph came at the Battle of Mohacs in 1526, when the Ottoman army crushed the Kingdom of Hungary. In a single afternoon, the medieval Hungarian state was destroyed, opening the road to Vienna. Suleiman was not only a land commander, but also a master of naval power. His admirals, most famously Barbarossa Hayreddin Pasha, transformed the Mediterranean into an Ottoman lake. Yet the Ottomans' fiercest rivalry was not only with the Habsburgs in Europe, but also with the Safavid Empire in Persia. The Safavids, under Shah Ismail I and later Shah Tahmasp I, were the champions of Shia Islam, while the Ottomans defended the Sunni world. This rivalry was both political and religious, shaping Middle Eastern history for centuries. In 1534, Suleiman personally led a massive campaign against the Safavids, marching deep into Mesopotamia. He captured Baghdad, securing control over Iraq and the holy shrines of Najaf and Karbala. This not only extended Ottoman rule, but also bolstered their claim as protectors of Islam. Several campaigns followed, but Safavid tactics of scorched earth and retreat often frustrated Suleiman's armies. Despite this, the Peace of Amasya in 1555 finally ended decades of conflict. Under its terms, the Ottomans retained Iraq and Baghdad. Eastern Anatolia was divided between the two empires. Pilgrimage routes for Shia Muslims into Ottoman territory were guaranteed. But Suleiman's greatness was not built on conquest alone. He earned the title Kanuni, the lawgiver, by reforming and codifying the empire's laws. He harmonized Sharia, Islamic law, with Kanun, sultanic decrees, creating a more consistent system of justice across the empire. Suleiman was also a patron of the arts, overseeing a cultural flowering that has come to be known as the Ottoman Golden Age. His court became a center of poetry, music, and architecture. The greatest of all Ottoman architects, Mimar Sinan, rose to prominence under his reign, designing iconic structures like the Süleymaniye Mosque in Istanbul, completed in 1557. His private life also shaped his legacy. Against all precedent, Suleiman broke Ottoman tradition by marrying his beloved concubine, Hürrem Sultan, known in the West as Roxolana. Suleiman died in 1566 during the siege of Szigetvar in Hungary. Even as his empire stood at its peak, cracks were forming. Dynastic rivalries, the burden of constant war, and a sprawling bureaucracy that would prove difficult for his successors. Decline and transformation. By the late 17th century, the empire that once inspired fear and admiration began to falter. The reasons were complex: internal corruption, administrative stagnation, and the rapid modernization of Europe. The failed siege of Vienna in 1683 marked a turning point. From that moment on, the empire would be on the defensive. European powers like Austria, Russia, and Britain grew stronger. Their industrial and scientific revolutions left the Ottomans behind. The empire lost ground in the Balkans and North Africa. Nationalist uprisings erupted among its diverse peoples: Greeks, Serbs, Arabs, Armenians, each inspired by European ideas of independence. In response, reformers within the empire launched modernization efforts known as the Tanzimat reforms. They introduced new schools, legal systems, and even a constitution, an attempt to blend Islamic tradition with modern governance. But it was too little, too late. The Ottoman Empire had once been the bridge between East and West. Now it was becoming the sick man of Europe. The twilight of empire. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, the empire faced crisis after crisis. The Balkan Wars stripped it of most of its European lands. Its economy was in shambles, and its army, once invincible, was no match for industrialized powers. When World War I erupted in 1914, the Ottomans joined the Central Powers, Germany and Austria-Hungary, hoping to reclaim lost territories. They fought bravely at Gallipoli, where Ottoman forces under Mustafa Kemal, later known as Ataturk, defeated a massive Allied invasion. It was one of the empire's last great victories. But elsewhere, disaster struck. Arab revolts, British campaigns in the Middle East, and the eventual defeat of Germany sealed the Ottomans' fate. In 1918, the empire collapsed. Its vast lands were divided among the victors. Sultan Mehmed VI fled the country in exile. After 623 years, the Ottoman Empire was no more. Yet, the story didn't end there. From the ashes of the empire rose a new nation, the Republic of Turkey, founded in 1923 by Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. He abolished the Sultanate, ended the Caliphate, and launched sweeping reforms to modernize Turkey into a secular republic. But even as the empire vanished politically, its legacy endures. In architecture, cuisine, music, language, and culture spanning from the Balkans to the Middle East.